Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're going to take a look at a newer Delhi build using the Dome of Faith. Now if you didn't watch the Red Bull games yesterday, the Red Bull games, Marine Lord against Puppet Paw, Marine Lord was using this build and I thought this is a simple build that everyone can actually play with. It's flexible, it's actually really strong whether you're facing against English, if you're facing against something like a Delhi mirror, whatever you're doing. This is one of those builds that have such an incredible ramp up that you will always be able to afford to make a metric ton of units when it comes to that 8 to 12 minute mark. You will start to really feel a big ramp up, and then ultimately you'll be able to go for an all-in Feudal, you'll be able to go for a Castle Age, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. As usual, build in the description below, check it out, and try to play around with it. When you play, practice it a little bit, and get into rank with it. It's super strong. Basically, what you want to be doing is your queue up builds, of course. Always queue up villagers, always have those in motion. That queue always needs to be filled. Then you take and build one mask. You want to connect the berries together with the TC, and if you can, also get the wood line. But berries are the primary one. You want to get your mill under the influence. Then you're going to gather 50 wood here, and you take those 50 wood vills, and put them on the mill. You want them to build the mill, but you don't want to assign them onto a berry. They will do that automatically. If you're going to drop off at the TC, it doesn't make a big difference. It's okay that you do that because you're not going to get extra wood. It's just a small optimization to not go to the TC instead of, going to the TC. Anyways, so 6 villagers on food. Then you take 2 villagers, and the 2 villagers are going to be building a house and a mining camp. And they're going to go on gold, and it will stay on gold until you have sacred sites. Sacred sites will give you the gold you need to continue on with your market conversion, to make more scholars, and so on. Go castle if you want to do that. We are going to use that gold that those 2 villages will provide us to make constant scholars, to be able to produce faster, to get technologies faster, and to be able to take relics instantly when we go to the castle age. So you go 6, and then you go 2 on gold. And then you take 2 more onto the berries, because we want to have 8 on berries this entire time. We're not going to move them away. If we were going to move them away anyways, we would just go on sheep, which is why we go on sheep after the 8 villages on berries. So 6, 2, then 2 more to berries, and then the rest to sheep until you can age up. Very simple. Just like that. We speed it up a little bit here. As you can see, the villagers are gathering the gold. We have 7 here now. As for upgrades, they are noted in the build order, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically just get your wheelbarrow, get your fishing production and piety, and be able to cancel the piety once you're in feudal age, so you can get sanctity. Now you have 8 on food, you have 2 on gold, you can then move your sheep bills, and if you want to optimize this, take those sheep, move them close to the straggler tree, because you're going to move these sheep villagers a little bit into your age up. So once you've clicked up, you're going to take these villagers that go on the sheep, and put them straight on the lumber camp, and then you're going to shift click them onto the wood line. The reason you shift click them is because once they're done gathering the straggler tree, they will automatically go there. You're going to build a lumber camp here, and then you're just going to rally until you have about 10, 11 on wood. Very simple that way. You're going to be aging up just about 230. 230 is a pretty good mark for aging up here. You're going to age up with 4 vills, and you're going to be aging up with your berry vills. So preferably try to build your Dome of Faith close to the berries as well. If you can get the mosque and the Dome of Faith close together as well, that's perfect. As for scouting, always check out what your opponent's doing. Are they going 2DC? Are they going to go aggression? Are they going to go fast castle? Ask yourself those questions so that you can better adapt. Here I'm seeing my opponent is aging up and still has 3 on gold, so most likely going to be something like Abbey of Kings into Horsemen. That's how this matchup usually goes. If they're going to go second TC, you can go for the all-in there. You can get ranged armor, go into siege engineering, quite easy that way. But that's besides the point. That's more matchup-specific stuff. Now we're looking at the Dome of Faith. It's being built by 4 berry vills. We have taken our sheep vills and put them on the wood. And now we're just rallying wood until we have about 10 to 11 on wood. We want to get a lot of wood because we need to wall in sacred sites. We need to get multiple production buildings, blacksmiths, markets. And so it's really, really important that we get a lot of wood. These vills here would gather the food we need. And that will be building up so that we have enough food for ourselves to make gosserators or spears or whatever we need. So you can see we're building that lumber camp now. We have enough to build 1 scholar out of the Dome of Faith. You're not going to be building scholars out of your mosque, as the scholars in the mosque cost 130 gold. The Dome of Faith only costs 65, which is the half. And so you want to be able to pump out a lot of scholars immediately upon entering the feudal age. You can queue up forestry here if you want to. Not the most important upgrade, but it's fine. Get it. Here I'm scouting my opponent. I see he's going Abbey of Kings. He got the mill, so no villages on stone. And I can sort of already see how this game is going to play out. It's going to be very feudal heavy, which means I'm going to be focusing on cavalry myself. And with the Abbey of Kings, of course it got nerfed a few months ago, so we can afford to actually go blacksmith first. It's going to give us the upgrades we need to be able to sustain earlier on in feudal. We're going to get our first upgrade about 7 minutes, and our sacred sites are going to be captured before 7 minutes as well. So we have a really good timing here. Dome of Faith as well, just constantly producing those scholars. Blacksmith, then we go into stable, and then we can go barracks or archer range depending on what our opponent is doing. I would probably go tri-comp here because my opponent most likely will go for horsemen into spearmen or horsemen into spearmen and archers. And so you could go tri-comp and then try to win that way. Alright. So the blacksmith is up. I always like to queue Iron Undermesh first if I'm running Gaza Raiders. If you're not running Gaza Raiders and you're running Archer Spear or something like that, get Steeled Arrow instead. It is probably the better way to go about it because you have that upgrade coming in for your first few fights at that 7 to 8 minute mark. So try to get those upgrades. Again, with this build, it's not the biggest deal because you're going to have more scholars than if you're playing the Tower of Victory build, where your second upgrade comes in at 11 minutes and your first upgrade comes in at 8. Here, they're going to both come in before 10 minutes. And the first one comes in at 7:20 or something. Alright. So as we can see, we're sort of moving out here a little bit aggressive actually, because we know our opponent has a lot of units. We are already adding in the barracks, and we are putting our scholars inside of our production buildings, making them much more effective. So as we try to take the sacred site, we have added in spearmen, we have the horsemen, and we're really just trying to secure one sacred site at a time. If your opponent's very, very aggressive, always try to take one sacred site at a time. Don't try to rush all 3 sacred sites at once, because it gets harder and harder to take them, and you lose scholars, and you don't want to lose your scholars. You need those scholars for the upgrades. You need your scholars for production, and yeah, they're great to keep. You want to use them, and don't be afraid to stay in your base for longer. If you cannot move out of your base and take 3 sites at the beginning of like the 7th minute mark, absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. It doesn't really matter too much, because as long as your opponent is playing your game, which is to apply feudal pressure, to really go aggressive, you can do the same thing without really having to worry too much about your opponent going for a fast castle or outscaling you. So it's absolutely fine if you can't take all sites at 7 minutes. Here, we're taking one side at a time. We're using a spearman. We're walling in sacred sites, and then we're going to take them slowly one by one. Do this if you're under a lot of pressure. You can go more greedy if your opponent goes 2DC, and just take them freely. And then you can use more Gaza Raiders and then cover more of the map that way. But ultimately, if your opponent's going aggressive, trying to contest the sites, go one by one. It's much more effective that way. As for the Veil split in the base, it's about 50-50. And the reason it's 50-50 is because we are building a lot of walls right now. We are probably going to add in an archer range very soon. And even though we are running Spear and Gazi Raiders, where we might need more food, this is going to yield a lot of food already. So if you start to see floats of one resource like food or wood, then you take your villagers and move them to the other resource that has a lack of resources that you need. And then once you have the market, you can use the gold there to just pump more resources out by buying the resources you need to then balance out. And so that makes your economy so much more effective, because now you're not floating gold, now you're actually using that gold to actually do something. Instead of going Castlage by mistake or because you can, you're now staying in feudal and you are producing a lot more because you can, right? Because you got that gold income. Second sacred site here is taken. Really, really good, because now we're on 2 sacred sites, giving us a lot of gold, and we can use that, as I said before, in the market. We're also adding in an archer range, and we're just trying to full produce here. Again, it's sort of now that you start to see issues with housing, because now you start to be able to produce a lot more than you were before able to. Here, I'm not stressing the production too much. I'm just trying to keep my units together. I only have about 20 military right now, but I will bet you in about a minute and a half, I'll have twice as much, because now's when the ramp up happens. The ramp up is now. It's now that we'll be able to produce a lot of units. Our opponent is trying to decap this one sacred site. We know that he has spears. We know he has horsemen. We're just adding in the tri-comp. We're going spear, Gaza Raider, archers. Absolutely fine to do that. Use your Gaza Raiders to go and attack. And then try to do some damage. We have already taken out 2 villagers, our opponent taken out 1 villager, so that's absolutely fine. We can go in from the back here, take out a few villagers every now and then, so that's really good for us. As we can see here, we have 37 military. It's a little bit misleading, and that's because we have 10 scholars already. 10 scholars giving us all of the upgrades that we need, giving us that extra production speed, and so we can actually go on 3 production buildings for a longer time that way. Alright, let's speed up a little bit. We are now going to be seeing much more fighting. Try to do these concaves here where you bait your opponent into larger fights and force these fights as well. And don't be afraid to take them. You have the counter units, presumably. And so you will be able to take fights before they lead to these breakpoints where it's a lot harder for you to fight, where it's like 10 man-at-arms, 15 man-at-arms. A lot of people struggle with this. Take the fights before that. Force the fights before the English player or HRE player is able to pump out a lot more man-at-arms. Don't be afraid to be aggressive. Don't be afraid to push into an English base. Just don't stand under it and then die unnecessarily. Again, use your walling here to your advantage. If you have reinforcements coming and they're going to die to something like a horseman mass like this, run into the walls and then keep yourself safe. Here, we have our units taking out the men-at-arms. They die pretty easily to masses, so just don't be afraid to deal with that. You can see the horsemen here, not really finding the damage they need to. Pull away the damaged villagers then, and keep them safe at the back. Now, we are 2 minutes in, and we are on 9 archers, 21 spears, and 2 Ghazi raiders. So while we did lose a couple of Ghazi raiders, we are now massing up a lot more, and we will continue to do so. We just took a really, really good fight for us, and that means that we can actually go for an H-up if we want to. Get that tech up going, and get the last sacred site, and then ultimately play armored units. This is a really good thing to do if you've taken a good fight and your opponent's on the back foot, they're forced to play in their base, especially up against a civ like English. If you have that opportunity to go for the next stage, which we quite clearly have here, we took a really good fight. We're 14 against 43, and so we can do whatever we want to here. We could decide to go full feudal, but I would not advise to do that against men-at-arms civs, because they will keep on pumping the men-at-arms, and they are actually really, really strong in mass amounts. So just try to get to the next stage when you can. That's really the best part about this build, is you have that flexibility, which other daily builds don't. You have a lot of scholars, you're able to take all the relics, you're able to get the text going really quickly, and produce a lot the moment you go castle. So go for it. This is what you're looking for. Timing or the feudal all-in. If you go for the feudal all-in, then of course, don't go castle. Spend all your resources on making a lot of units, and you'll be absolutely fine trying to go for that all-in. But I would not recommend that against certain civs. English is one of those civs. This is a fight I shouldn't be taking. I pull my units away. He has a lot of men-at-arms, which is really good for me. It sort of indicates that, okay, he has a pretty good food economy. He might be going castle, but hey, he's sticking with units that are not going to scale very well. And so now that I'm castle age and I've taken all the relics, you can see the relics here, they're coming back. Then what we're doing is essentially just mass-producing knights, men-at-arms, crossbows. Go for those expensive units now, and try to take out those men-at-arms whilst they're still weak. If your opponent aged up with White Tower here, great for you. You can keep scaling and play the long game, play villager fortresses. If they went for the King's Palace, they are going to start to outscale you, but you still have a significant lead, so just go for the all-in, right? Don't be afraid. Gonna speed it up a little bit here. We end up chasing a lot of these men-at-arms down. We move out to the food sources out here. Again, we're not making farms. Don't make farms as deli. Just try to stay alive without them. If you're playing a longer feudal, of course, you can make farms if you need to. Here, we are taking our opponent's berries. You can do that if you have the map control for it. And then we're pushing into the enemy economy. I'm not really afraid of the enemy economy here, because I have all the units I need to be able to take out those defensive units. And the TC, again, I have ranged armor. I got most of my upgrades coming through. So it's really not that big of a deal. I've gone double blacksmith here for the castle age, as there are a lot of upgrades that we need to get. I've got a second archer range, a second stable, so I think that's about 5 production buildings. Yep. And 4 of them have scholars as well, so they're a lot more effective. Then we're idling out half of our opponent's economy, and we're going to go and build a keep in the front here. And that's going to provide us with a position for where we can siege down our opponent. So we can see we started the construction of the keep. We forced another 6 men-at-arms. We're not stupid, so we're not going to stay under here for much longer. We've idled out enough to get the advantage we need. We're still 52 military to 5, and 62 economy to 46. We did the damage. We have essentially won the game. If you can do this, if you can pull this keep drop off afterwards, then you have a really great position to force the game, right? You want this game to end now. You don't want to go late against English because that's when you give them comeback potential. And so any civ that has that comeback potential from being second TC and stuff like that, just wipe them when you can. Don't sit in your base. Don't stay somewhere where you don't need to be. Just go really, really aggressive. Go really, all in and try to grab that victory when you can. Don't stay in your base and do nothing, right? So work with your information. If you don't have it, use your scout, and then you will probably be able to win most of your games this way. Really strong build. I recommend checking out the game that was played by Marine Lord and Puppy Paw in the Red Bull Waterloo Grand Final Best of 5. It was really solid. That was more of a Feudal Age game, but it just goes to show you that with that very same build, you can go castle if you need to. So yeah, really strong build. I recommend it a lot. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comment section below, or message me on Discord. If you're interested in coaching, there'll be some information about that now. I still do a lot of solo coaching, but I've also started doing rec reviews lately. And so if you have replays that you're interested in, I offer rec reviews at 10 euros per rec review. Pretty in-depth with screenshots and timestamps describing all of the analytical points that I'm trying to make, and give you some good tools to really get into thinking about the game more the next time you play those very same matchups, or with your civ, or whatever it is that you need to work on. So yeah, check that out as well. I'll see you guys in the next one.